My name's Meriel Chamberlin. I'm the founder of Full Circle Fibres, and I'm a textile scientist. Textile scientist, what's sort of them? Yes, it's actually a thing. You can study textile science at undergrad, not in this country anymore. And I've been 25 years in the textile and clothing industry, and I have had the privilege to work at every stage of the supply chain in real life. And that includes fibre, all the way through to working at retail and a buying team. So I hope that I can bring some of my perspective from that and my passion to still be in this industry and how incredible it can be to the challenge of textile circularity. So this graph, the challenge, we've seen a few other graphs similar today, but I bring it again. And this one was actually put together by Make the Label Count. And there's going to be a lot of different graphs and graphics in this. They all come from different reports. So many reports have been written about this subject. But really this picture of total fibre demand, and the interesting point that in 2000, when the basically all trade restrictions came down, that's when the volume took off. And that's about the same time that we got really good at making polyester all over the world. And so that pink wedge there is showing where all the growth of fibre use is coming from, which is synthetics and mainly polyester. Cotton use hasn't really changed in the last 20 years. It sits around 23 to 25 million tonnes. But the really big thing is the fact that we've got essentially a textile waste structural deficit. So the volume of new textiles that we're making every year is eclipsing, even by proportion, the amount that we are making from any recycled content and the textiles that we're recycling. So it is still getting away from us. However, I also want to get everybody to think about this a little bit differently. So we have this challenge, and we have this amazing footprint at the moment on the planet, which has to end. It cannot continue like this forever. So the only question is, are we going to do something about it at our choice, or is it going to smack us over the head? And really, I'd like to point out that we make the mistake of seeing the little skinny lines on there as insignificant. And wool often gets forgotten. Wool, okay, it's less than 1% of the world industry. That's still around 1 million tonnes a year. And wool is one of the most amazing fibres for circularity. So I want us to stop thinking in percentages and start thinking in tonnes. Because the tonnes are where we're going to start thinking and creating impact. And just because it might not look like a big part of the pie chart, it might be an easier part of the pie to start with. So we've really got to be pragmatic. And the same goes with our natural fibres. And I'd like us to think about that big pink wedge as opportunity. It is the opportunity for all the other solutions to be displacing. And we end up sometimes in these fibre wars of cotton's better than hemp, it's better than linen, and this and the other. If it is nature-based, there is a way for it to be part of a system that's circular and in harmony with the planet. It's just up to us to turn those tools on. And so we really need to all work together on that rather than end up scrapping. That can be frustrating. So we have this challenge of tonnes. We also have a data problem. This is one graph. The next graph is going to look similar. Data from the UNEP and their various percentages to do with fibre and textile production. Noticing this points out that the dyeing, as Chris mentioned earlier, is the largest single footprint point. So trying to do something about reducing the need to do that is going to help us reduce our footprint. This is about impact. The other one, we end up with this land use one, but what amazes me is there's 0% for the waste. Who did that maths? Honest to God, who did that maths? How is there no footprint for the waste? My point is, the data in this industry is patchy at best and downright awful sometimes. So we have to stick to the fundamentals and not necessarily, oh, it's been written in a report, it's right. Sometimes stuff ends up in a report because it's easy, because somebody was Googling with a spreadsheet and didn't put their head up and look out the window. So we all just have to have a think about where the data's good, or interrogate where it's from, interrogate who funded it, and interrogate, like in this case, oh, well, the data would post point of sales too hard, so we're just not going to include it. That's where a lot of our industry data comes from, and just because it's hard doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So the business of trying to sort out that wedge is trying to sort out balance, okay? This is about what systems can work and what systems can work now or could work. And I've taken this slide from Fibres movement, which, if any of you have heard of it, probably seems pretty niche and pretty artisan. But I just want you to remember the fundamentals here. Fundamentally, from our natural fibres, we can grow them, we can use them, we can make them, we can dye them with safe chemicals, we can wear them out, we can compost them, and it can go back. The thing that makes it unsustainable is the intensity. This sheep is unsustainable if there's overgrazing. It's not the sheep that's unsustainable. This cotton grows more ready to go as cellulose than anything else we've been talking about today. The cotton plant is a marvel and a miracle, and the fibre that it grows is the longest, strongest cell in the world. Am I right? Asking my cyro cotton scientist there. And that you can wear on your skin straight away. You've got to scour the wool. The people at Michelle's wool are really good at scouring that wool really, really efficiently, world leaders over there. But that you could hand spin and wear on your skin right now. So all this other processing that we are doing to displace the problems of the natural fibre industry are the problems of the commodification and financialisation of the fibre industry, not the fibres technically themselves. And we have to keep a hold of those fundamentals as we look for solutions, all right? So that cotton's grown in St George on a farm where there are snakes, frogs, bees making honey. It's not dead, it's very much alive, farming with the grandchildren in mind. And no, it's not 10,000 litres of water a kilo, it's about 700 litres of water in a t-shirt. But every single supply chain's impact, you have to know where it's from to know what that impact is. So this can work. Natural fibres could just be in balance. Should we all just go home, forget the rest? It's probably not practical. So I'm going to ask you to imagine forward 10 years. This picture here is of a customer of mine wearing a cotton shirt that's been made from cotton grown here, milled and made here, and the shirts that they've been wearing for 3 years on their cattle farm in Claremont, North Queensland, have still not popped a hole. That's durability right there from that amazing fibre. But just imagine that we make all our scrubs in our hospitals from cotton, process that well. This is in 2035. And then when they've come to their end of life, we've mechanically recycled them. And we've turned that fibre, maybe we've blended a bit of virgin, and we've made some polo shirts for use in HK. And then when those polo shirts, still 100% cellulose, have been finished with, then we put them into the man-made cellulose system. We make some regenerated cellulose, the lyocell process. But then we made them into hygiene products. 20% of textiles is in hygiene and single use, by the way, mopping up all our mess. And the films that were making them useful to use were biofilms, so those at end of life could be compostable. Everything about that is possible today. This is not an innovation problem, this is an implementation problem. The question is how we're going to organise ourselves to get around that. So I want you to all be inspired, because that supply chain that I just described, we could have certified the composting with the work going on at Deakin. We could have been doing the clean, the nanolose work or whatever as part of how we've, complemented what we've done with regenerated cellulose. There's so much going on right here in Australia that could be leading the world in how that supply chain works. So I think we should actually be really excited about that. And then this year I've had the privilege of travelling on a Churchill Fellowship to study zero waste textiles, looking at where it's working now and where it never stopped working, and what are the industrial ecosystems where it's working in business as well as technically, essentially. And so as part of that, I travelled to some places in Europe where textiles are being made best practice, including with some of the recycling that's been discussed already. And one of the things I want to point out about here is we often have a conversation about scale and where innovation is happening. And most of the innovation I've witnessed does not file for patents, they're not scaling with massive VC, they are SMEs that have been running for decades, possibly even centuries. This photo is from a denim mill in northern Italy, Candiani. They are famous for innovating in denim. Those are their warp dyeing lines, because that's how you dye denim, that's 2 of 6 that they have. That sounds like a huge factory, right? That looks like a huge factory. They make 0.1% of the world's denim. So again, I want you to start thinking about what is scale, and not worrying about what percentage the other world is doing, but if we can make viable businesses, even if it looks like a tiny bit of the pie chart, that might still be a really, really viable business when we get these things going. And stop worrying about market share, worry about the product and the market that you're in. That's what they do. They've been going for 75 years. They're the world's leaders in the most efficient and eco-friendly ways to make great quality denim, including mechanical recycling where it makes sense. And now, because it's the end of the day, I want you to all stand up, please, if you can. The chart up here is a map of the more real textile industry, which isn't just that beautiful natural fibre chain. And some parts of it are the manufacturing on the left, and some parts of it are all the distribution on the right. So I would like you to stay standing if you have ever visited a factory or worked in one. And if you haven't, please sit down. Great. And now I would like you to stay standing if you have ever worked in or with factories only, not just visiting, but in your job worked with products made in or making in a factory. Otherwise, please sit down. And then please stay standing if you have had to make decisions in your work life around whether a product is going to be saleable or not, i.e. have you been a designer, have you been making quality decisions, maybe in or with factories, because your living or other people's living has depended on the product decisions that you've made. Please stay standing. Rightio. Cool, so what I want to point out is all the people standing have experience of something that's going to be involved with implementing the solutions. All right, what it's going to be like, because you've got a decision that's come your way with something that's happened in the real world that might not fit our nice theoretical practice. And you're going, oh, yeah, that's going to meet the recycled content standard, but I can't imagine anybody buying it. Okay, thanks, you can all sit down. So I want to point out that the people who have had practical experience of having to make a living from selling a product have to understand how they're going to get their customers to part with money using the solutions that we talk about, okay? Now, beautifully for me, Ragham's already done a marvellous summary of textile recycling, so I don't have to go over this in great detail. I'm very, very much appreciated. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about one of the really exciting parts that Ragham pointed to, which is slow mechanical. So it is known that, well, it is sort of proven that if we want to recycle textiles with the biggest decarbonisation bang for our buck, if you like, where we can mechanically recycle, it is the best impact value. It isn't the solution for everything, but my God, where it is worth doing, it is our best shot for getting lower impact. But traditionally it's been considered that that's more of a down cycle because of the length of the fibre being compromised in the process. But what's really exciting is that has changed, and there are now a couple of businesses that are able to pull apart the fabric a little bit more gently and protect that fibre length, which is game-changing. Not just because it enables us to make a finer, high-quality yarn or a higher recycled content, but also because some of the fibre blends it's able to tackle are more broad as well. I've seen carbon fibre that's been through this process. Like, that's unheard of. So I just want to point out that that's super exciting. The next thing I want to talk about is percentage recycled content and targets versus drawing through and making it work, and the kind of flexibility and context that's required. This diagram's from a company called March & Fildy. They're a spinner in Vienna. They also have mills in Brazil and in Eastern Europe, and they have been mechanically recycling and spinning for decades, and they are an amalgamation of some other businesses that were in that area before. And they do a mixture of spinning virgin, spinning their own waste, and also buying in textile waste ready for spinning, both post and pre-consumer. And they have a massive range of yarns that they sell as a result of that. But what they do is they spin with the ingredients that come their way. So sometimes that recycled content might be 20%, sometimes it might be 50%, sometimes it might be 5%. But as a whole, as a business, the tons that they are putting back through is what is making impact. And so what I'd like you to think about at the moment is we often have this kind of holy grail of we're going to have 100% recycled content. We've talked about it a lot. And in fact, I think this might have been part of Renew Sales Challenge. People got so excited about 100% circulose. But we also know that new recycled content is really expensive. And then we also know that the people trying to pilot and get new things going need orders in tons, right? They don't care if that 10 tons is spread over 100 tons of product, if it's blended with some other natural fibre now, so that that product can be consistent and a more competitive price. That might be harder for the marketing people because they got really, really excited about the 100% story. But that's why we end up with these pilots and capsules that don't go further. We've got to have a really pragmatic conversation about what those partnerships might look like. So if I'm in a brand and I'm going, okay, I'm buying millions of units of product and I want to try and help one of these fibres through the process, then what does it look like if we can partner with a mill and get a 5% content of the novel fibre in? But that means we can commit to 10 tonnes. We can commit to take it over 2 years, however long they get there, and tell the story, because then there's room for those first pilot batches to maybe not be perfect, because we've kind of got to take these baby steps of well, we're just still at kindy, right? And we just need someone holding our hand, and we've still got to make this product that's A, affordable, and B, that then those fabric processors know that they can process it and know that the product's going to be good quality, or that they know the dye system's going to work on it, or it's going to cope. And so while we've got this tiny, tiny base of new and novel fibres or recycled content, our commitment to enterprise level to pull through tonnes are going to be more important than an item with a particular percentage recycled content, if we're still thinking about the blend at end of life. You know, so if you've got 90% cotton and 10% nylons, awesome, it's all cellulose. When Tencel was invented by Lenzing, it was invented to be blended with cotton. It was never invented to be 100%. It was to add properties of more drape. You know, so we've sort of got to get our pragmatic hats on, I think. And so what about Australia? What could work here? Because we're missing one link, but that one link is beginning to close. So we do have some tearing capability here, but it's currently been set up more for non-woven supply, or it's the wool tearing at Waverley Mills in Tasmania, which is set up for their particular process. But we can't spin a yarn. Sounds a bit ridiculous in this country, doesn't it? So I'm saying we're missing this keystone capability to spin yarn. But one of the most exciting things is we have a whole lot more going for us compared with Europe, because we grow the world's best, most efficient, high quality cotton. We grow world leading merino wool. We grow 75% of the world's fine wearable wool. We have loads of space. We're 10 days on a boat from Asia. We can power it entirely with renewable energy, and we know that we can absolutely be sure of the labour conditions in a mill that only needs a handful of people. And so we've kind of got a unicorn opportunity. If we made yarn here, it doesn't all need to be made into cloth here. That is an export commodity as well. So the question is, how can we all get together to get people to go, okay, let's go? Because nothing needs inventing. The technology is so automated, so amazingly sophisticated now, we just need to get on with it. But how do we create that business case? Everybody loves to put the pressure on the fashion brands. Now, you're not expected to remember this pretty complex diagram, but it's the Netherlands have just had a study done on the stocks and flows of their textile use. Invest NL did this, or their equivalent of Austrade. And what we need to look for is the acupuncture point. Because if we're going to make things here, we need to look at the textiles that we use day in, day out as a community, no matter the economic conditions, no matter the weather, no matter the natural disasters. What is it that we always use? We always use workwear. We always use textiles in healthcare. And if we look at the part of this which is doing the most recycling and reuse, it's this little acupuncture point here. That is where they're separating professional textiles. And again, I want you to start thinking in tons, not percentages, because it's like, well, why bother? Look at those huge other bits. There's 28,000 tonnes just in that little acupuncture point there of opportunity. Further in the slides in this slide deck, which is available to anybody to download, they identify that that is the most logical place to start with a business case for closing the loop on their shorts too. So we nationally need to understand this to then enable governments to see a tiny commitment to a tiny part of our civic textiles could be the baseload demand that then makes bringing spinning back investable. So let's get out of the flowcharts and into a factory. This is an example. This is in the Netherlands. I met them while I was over there. Spinning Jenny, they are called. And this is an example of the latest best practice setup. But what you can also see here is they've got several different things running at once. That's how flexible the capability is. And they are spinning with fibres that have kept their colour. They haven't been re-dyeing them. This mill is so versatile. It is spinning cotton, linen, hemp, recycled polyester, straightforward polyester, recycled cotton, recycled mix. They are doing commission spinning, and they are doing yarn for a range, and they do a mix of virgin and recycled content, all from the same setup. 4 people required to work in the factory. And their output is enough, it's 1,500 tonnes, and tonnes doesn't mean a lot to people here, but that's 6 million t-shirts worth. So that might sound like not a lot, but it is a lot. And so finally, and I've got a few bits of show and tell here, we haven't yet talked today about design. We have to make things people want. It's all very well counting all the footprint, but just bear with me. Brought 2 scarves. According to the current HIG MSI, this one would score a hell of a lot better than this one. This one's wool, this one's polyester. Which one's beautiful? Okay, you might not like the colours, but if we don't make things people want to love and cherish and wear and care for, we are not going to achieve lowering waste. And so while we can count all of this stuff to the ends of the earth, if we're not making sure with the output that we've got, we're creating beautiful products. There's some beautiful recycled wool from Yorkshire. It's just stunning. You actually can't create those from a straightforward virgin flat dyeing process. Like, there are things that you can only create by blending coloured fibres. That can have you at a design leading edge, no matter the recycled content or not. So my final slide, it's a little bit of reading. I had the privilege of visiting the Liberty printing mill. And that is one of the only companies that is milling and only supplying into fashion and homewares and not workwear. It's been around for over 100 years. And they unashamedly only will print designs that they would be prepared to put their own brand on, even if they commission print, because they understand the value of design as much as the value of the product quality. And if any of you know wearing anything that's a Liberty 100% cotton, it lasts and lasts and lasts and lasts, because it's an engineered to be excellent process. So if we don't engineer for excellence, we're not going to get anywhere. So in a kind of takeaway, I'd like to just say that nothing needs inventing. All the technology exists for us to get started now. It's not going to be a diet pill one solution. It's going to be a range of discipline and the right mix of ingredients and all the rest of it to slim our textile demand down. And there is no reason for Australia not to be leading the world, because the heart of all of this innovation is sat in SMEs that we are perfectly capable of sustaining here. Thanks.